brushes palette. In Photoshop, make a new document, web, hit OK. And also go to Window, Brush. Pops up this big palette. We're going to put this palette over here. I'm going to put this down here. Let's grab a brush and go into this palette, and we're going to go to Brush Tip Shape. The first thing that we're going to do is go down to something like the maple leaf. Just by choosing the maple leaf, it looks like this. If I want to adjust the spacing, I can, and it adjusts the spacing so when I go like this, there's a nice space between these. I can also change the flatness of it. I can rotate it. Okay, this works with every brush, not just the maple leaf, but all brushes can be rotated, moved. Now, if I went with a standard brush like this one above, like 30, and did this, I have a very flat brush. And if I rotated it, again on the other side. Now, flipping at X and Y isn't going to make too much sense unless you have a brush that isn't symmetrical, like this one. Okay, I can grab up this single plane of grass, or I can flip it and then drag it in the other direction. I can even flip it Y and then unflip it X. There I have this. So you can imagine that every brush has an infinite amount of different possibilities just by this one panel alone. Okay, let's go down to the next panel. There is size, angle, roundness. Now I'm not going to go through each one of these because they do take a while to cover. But I will say that brush dynamics is probably the most important one, in the fact that if I took a regular brush and went to brush shape dynamics and turned on size jitter to pen pressure, I get that variation when I lightly click and drag, I got a thin line, and when I hog down, I got a fat line and back. You should practice that a little bit, because really that's all about drawing on a computer, is be able to make different variations of line. Remember, when you flip over your brush, you have an eraser. So I'm just going to erase some of this stuff. Angle jitter, again, only works if you have a brush that's non-symmetrical. So if you had something like maybe this, and I went angle jitter, I could put that on pen pressure also. And the harder I click down, the faster it'll rotate. Having too many things on pen pressure is very dangerous. The more and more things that you get on pen pressure, the slower things get. Especially when you have stuff like the next palette, which is scattering. Scattering allows me to scatter it all over the place on a various count and jitter it. If I add shape dynamics to that also, with angle jitter set to pen pressure and then size of jitter, and if I lightly click, it's all over the place. But this makes a good background. Reason why this is flying through this very quickly is the fact that I chose a really small document. Remember, I went new web 640 by 480. Anytime that you have a bigger document, like if I went new and went into something like US paper at 300 dots per inch and try using this brush, you can see that it is very laggy. All right. Now, as I said, I'm not going to go through each and one of these. I will go to color dynamics, because this one is pretty fun. And the fact that if I have another color like red and this one's purple, I can go to background foreground jitter and set that to pen pressure. And now it'll make variations of purple and red ones. Again, not very practical, but with this brush. But if you had something like a normal soft brush, and I have color dynamics, I can really plop out some different hues on top of each other. It's really neat. Changing the brush, the opacity is another thing. So if I went to opacity and change that, I could put lots and lots of texture in an area using this method. And it's all about texture. All right, so that's the basics that I want to cover here. Know that every one of these things can be changed to something else. But really, it's upon experimentation that's really going to hit home. Just experiment with the rest of these where it says like fade, pen pressure, pen tilt. Some of these things work well with a Wacom drawing tablet, some does not. I like initial direction quite nicely. That one's always a crowd pleaser when you're drawing. But again, millions and millions of combinations could not be covered in one video alone. So enjoy. That is brushes 2, and that is using the brush palette. Enjoy.